Okay, what I want to talk about is really thinking about a misconception in my field of psychological research, which is reading comprehension development, and thinking about sort of a misconception that reading instruction should really focus on word decoding. That's like reading words accurately aloud, and the fact that we don't need to teach reading comprehension skills. And although there is a wealth of research now from myself and from colleagues to show that that's not the case, we still see a legacy of this myth in our school curricula today. So, we see reflected the idea that teaching of reading should focus on learning to read words aloud accurately, and very little attention is paid to fostering the wide range of skills and knowledge that we need to read for meaning. And I mean, obviously, for the young beginner reader, learning to map the written symbols on the page into the sounds and the meanings of the words in their spoken language is absolutely critical to enable them to construct meaning from text. But my research and research of like other people globally shows that good word reading itself does not ensure good reading comprehension. And we find that about 10% of children in classrooms across the world develop age-appropriate word reading skill, but their reading comprehension is 1 to 2 years below what you would expect given their ability to read words and their chronological age. And these children also have poor listening comprehension, poor understanding of text that's read aloud to them. So we know that the source of their poor reading comprehension is not poor word reading ability. And what we're doing in our research is looking for the sources of their poor reading and listening comprehension skill. And a key problem that these children and other children have is weak oral language. So if you think about a text, if you don't know the meanings of sufficient words in that text, or if you're not familiar with a range of different syntactic structures that are being used to convey the meanings of sentences, and if you don't have the processing skills that you need to integrate meanings across those individual sentences to make links between events in a text, then you're going to fail to grasp an adequate understanding of the text that you read. And I mean, this has got incredibly significant consequences. So we find that a child's language skills, when they start school, predict their later reading ability right through to adolescence. And their reading ability in adolescence predicts their later education and employment prospects. And it even goes on to predict things like health outcomes. So, literacy is very, very important. It pervades all areas of our lives. So it's not just reading for pleasure or learning in school that we use reading for, but our ability to be sort of engaged and active citizens in society who can make choices about our healthcare, about investments, even to participate in democracy. All of these things depend on having good reading comprehension, which is much more than simply reading words aloud accurately. And so one of the things that we've been looking at when we've been taking our research findings and seeing how we can implement them in interventions like in schools and in the home is to focus on this very early start to book sharing and reading for meaning, to get away from this idea that a good reader is simply someone who can read the words aloud accurately and fluently. And what we find is that the vocabulary that we use in books, the syntax, the grammatical sentence structures that we use, these are very different in books from what they're like in conversation. So as I'm talking now, I'm using quite a limited vocabulary. I'm using quite an informal set of syntactic structures. With a book, because an author has got time to reflect, think about their language, choose a variety of words, convey meaning in a variety of ways. We have very rich vocabulary. We have sort of sentence structures that are less familiar than you'd have in spoken language. And we're having to like sort of integrate information to do with like the causal sequence of events or to do with the temporal sequence of events in books across sort of like paragraphs and even like, you know, chapters when you get to chapter books. So it's a very different experience from that conversation in the here and now, when you're sort of like just talking with a child. And what our work has found, and this is sort of like my work from colleagues at Lancaster and other collaborators across the globe, is the importance of these oral language skills that you bring to reading instruction. And so children who experience this very rich oral language background at home, they make better progress in learning to read. And a lot of that rich oral language experience is actually coming from a focus on books, not just conversation about the here and now. So I think the key message that we've been pushing out, and that I'm going to push out in this video, is this idea that parents and teachers, you don't need to wait until reading instruction begins to lay down the foundational skills that support good reading comprehension. So it's not just about reading words aloud accurately. Reading comprehension is also about constructing meaning from text. And if you share books with children from infancy, discussing the stories, asking them questions, really engaging in an interactive style of reading and really getting children to enjoy print, this can make a significant difference by giving children the foundational skills they need that then support their learning to read and their subsequent reading comprehension ability.